today I have the most unique books I've ever read, and two of them were written by Aldous Huxley. That just shows you how much I like Huxley's style and how he was able to write in so many different manners. He also wrote plays, he wrote philosophy, he wrote stories. Very interesting guy, and if you haven't read anything by him, it's definitely worthwhile. But the first book I have for you is The Kabbalion. And this is a very, very short book, and it's very, very weird in the sense because it blends all genres. It reads like a philosophy book, it reads like a self-help book, it reads like an esoteric, not novel, like a manual, like something that you would read in the introductory stages of joining a secret society. And it's very weird. It really is, but it's also at the same time extremely interesting and extremely powerful. And if you're not familiar with Hermetic philosophy or what Hermeticism is, basically Hermeticism is the teachings of Hermes Trismegistus, who is supposedly the combination of the Egyptian god Thoth and the Greek god Hermes, known as the first alchemist. Very, very debatable if he existed or not. In certain circles, people think he was a real person. In other circles, people think he was an amalgamation. But the beliefs are super interesting because it's really the building block of a lot of esoteric thinking, and you can see these esoteric thoughts in most world religions. There's 7 Hermetic principles. I don't remember all of them off the top of my head. The first one is the mind is all, that everything is a creation of the mind. Then it goes into rhythm, which is the idea that everything is ebbing and flowing. There's the idea that everything's happening on such a large scale that we can't quite see the order in it, but everything is ordered. There's a lot of interesting ideas in here, and to try to explain this book in a few minutes is to vastly undersell what it talks about, but it's just interesting. It really is. It's a cool thing that when you're reading it, you're like, oh wow, this is clicking. Oh wow, this is why this is that. And it really does have a lot of gems in it. I think it's something worthwhile to pick up, especially if you're into the older side of philosophies, because you can kind of see where this influenced Plato, you can kind of see where this influenced Socrates, and I guess Aristotle rejected, but a lot of old philosophies are derived from this system, and a lot of Renaissance and alchemical thinking is derived from this as well, which does have a huge influence because if you know Sir Isaac Newton, you know who that is. He wrote a third of his writings about science, a third about religion, and a third about alchemy. So it's hidden, but it's always there, and I think it's a super interesting thing to pick up simply because I don't really know how to describe it. The next book we have is Spinoza's Ethics, and to summarize Spinoza, I don't think I could do a good job of it. I think it's something that you just have to read for yourself, but Spinoza, through logic, proves the existence of God. And I know that makes no sense, and I know if you're a rabid atheist, that's one of the most heretical statements I could ever say. I really just urge you to pick up Spinoza because he doesn't describe God in the sense of an all-powerful creator, but he just describes God in the sense of everything derived from one original source, and everything is an expression of that source, and whether you think it's chaos or random, it's all the same thing. And when you really think about it scientifically, this is a sound argument, and this is so far before any sort of these modern discoveries when it comes to atoms, when it comes to electrons, protons, neutrons, all that kind of stuff. It really just is impressive to read Spinoza, and Spinoza has influenced people everywhere from Nietzsche to Freud to Schopenhauer to Jung. It's interesting to go back and read some of these writers and see them reference Spinoza and see them, kind of cite this old thinker. And Spinoza was really one of the first secular philosophers, which is a super interesting thing because prior to Spinoza, I think Spinoza was around in the 17th century, early 17th century, and basically everything prior to that was justifying religion. Everything prior to that was justifying God. You had some of the alchemists that were hiding their writings and teachings through allegory, but this was really the first widely spread religious philosophy, and it's just super interesting. I really don't know how to describe it aside from that, but with that said, we'll get into the next book. The next book is the Red Book. Honestly, the Red Book reads like something out of a schizophrenic mind. That's the only way to put it. If you're familiar with Carl Jung, You usually are used to his very polished style, his very intellectual style, very scientifically sound style of proving and showing this and corroborating with evidence and treatments of his patients and all sorts of things that really give a compelling narrative of what he's trying to say. But in this book, Jung explored his own unconscious, and he did this through the process of active imagination, which is basically getting yourself in a meditative-like trance. I do not suggest doing this. This is what Carl Jung did. I need to say that because I feel like somebody's going to try it. Do not try it. It's not something that you should do, especially if you don't have anyone around you. But basically, Jung went into his own unconscious, went into his own imagination, and explored and was conversing with the figments of his own imagination in order to find out the things that he needed to do to find his sanity. And this all arose out of basically Freud and Jung had a very good friendship at the beginning of Jung's career, and basically Freud was grooming Jung to become his successor and basically have him take over. But Jung wrote this book. It's called The Psychology of the Unconscious. It's really his first work that's of any note. But basically, in this book, he denounces some of Freud's theories and he kind of disproves them. Because of this, it caused a rift, and basically Jung lost all his professional credibility, and after he lost all his professional credibility, he had to pick up the pieces and build himself back up. So over the course of, I think it was 5 years, basically he was experimenting with this process and coming to grips with himself and becoming whole with himself so that he could be the best doctor possible. Because this is really the biggest criticism of Freud, is that Freud was unwilling to be psychoanalyzed himself. Freud never received any sort of treatment or any sort of therapy. So anytime he was coming up with a theory or anytime he was treating a patient, what he was basically doing was projecting his own issues onto that person. Whereas Jung tried to become objective as possible, and he tried to treat everyone as objectively as possible. So through the course of this book, he's really coming to grips with his biggest demons. He's really coming to grips with, the fundamental questions of relationships, of God, of religion, of conformity, of all sorts of issues that he was struggling with. And it really is very inspiring, but it's very hard to read at the same time. And it's just so unique in the sense that this is one of the smartest men that ever lived, telling you schizophrenic ramblings. And if you really pay attention and you really parse through the value, you can get a lot of insights through it. And it's really, I don't know how to describe it aside from it's really weird. But if you take the time to read this book, then you're in store for a very, very interesting ride, whether it's just for seeing a little bit of insight into Jung and the things that he dealt with in his life, or you see similar patterns in yourself and you see similar symbols in yourself and you want to find a healthy way forward. But overall, just a super interesting book, and if you have the patience for it, it's definitely something worth reading because it's just so cool. It's just so cool. Like, I feel like I've read so much Jung that, like, I kind of got tired of his robotic style, and I could see the hints of his artistic and creative side, but this book really shows the depth of that mind, the depth of that creativity, and why he ended up being such a successful individual. So the next book is The Perennial Philosophy. This is one of Huxley's more interesting works. Huxley doesn't really add any commentary in this book. It's really just him pulling together a lot of different ideas. And it's interesting because Huxley's someone that went through a spiritual awakening at a later point in his life. I'll talk about that with the next book. But basically, Huxley never claimed to be any sort of religion. I think it was his uncle actually coined the term agnostic, and that's what Huxley described himself as. But basically what the Perennial Philosophy is it's trying to find the common threads of all religion and trying to find the things that they agree on and the things that they all embrace in order to bring these ideas together, in order to synthesize them into one coherent idea so that we can understand what religion is, what God really is. And really the central thing I took away from this book was Huxley's observation that the more physical the God, the more physical the idols and the symbols, the more likely the person is to commit holy wars, to commit all of these atrocious acts and all of these horrible things. But the more metaphysical the God, the more peaceful and the more loving and the more accepting the people were. And to me, that's always been my biggest criticism of every religion. It's the idea that I need to win you to my way. I need to do this. I need to do this. Like, when has anything ever been accomplished through force? I don't think anything has ever been accomplished through force that wasn't eventually taken back. And that's really the truth of the world. That's really the truth of everything. And once you understand that, then you understand that if there was a God, I don't know if you believe in God or not, but it wouldn't be the intention to physically put someone into a church, physically put someone into the space and tell them what to believe. It would be through your actions show them. And to me, it hits at a lot of very interesting and congruent ideas, whether it's the ascetics and the idea of fasting and the idea of depriving yourself of the things of this world in order to get a deeper experience, in order to really appreciate the things you have. Because what the real thing in asceticism, this is what you see in, I hope I say it right, I hate when I have only seen a word and I've never heard it out loud because I feel like I pronounce it wrong, but this is really what Walden talks about. It's like when you commit to only living off the bare means of things, then you can appreciate the things you have because you're relying on them. But when you have things in excess, it's really hard to appreciate them. And that's really what the ascetics were getting at. It wasn't going out in the mountains and being a monk. It was doing it for the sake of appreciation, doing it for the sake of understanding that you could be alive with so much less. And once you start to appreciate that, then you can start to appreciate the whole world around you. And there's very many other interesting ideas in this, but I feel like I'm dragging on this video too long. I mean, I still have... we're not even halfway through the video, and it's already 11 minutes long, so I'm going to just keep going because the next book I'm also talking about Huxley, which is The Doors of Perception. The Doors of Perception is probably one of Huxley's more infamous works, and it's infamous in the sense that, like, you're either going to love this book or hate this book. And the reason is because Huxley, very late into life, I think he was in his 50s. I don't know how much longer he lived after this experience, but basically he wanted a spiritual experience, and he basically figured out that the shortcut was to take mescaline, which is the synthetic form of peyote. And I am not advocating for that. I'm not telling you to do this. I'm just telling you the story of the book. You're an adult. Do what you want, but don't hurt anyone else. That's all I gotta say. But anyway, The Doors of Perception is the idea. It's basically a quote from William Blake. It's like something along the lines of, when the doors of perception are removed, then man will see that he is everything all at once. Okay, here it is. If the doors of perception were cleansed, everything would appear to man as it is infinite. Basically saying that everything is connected, and it's only our physical limitations that allows us not to see this. And basically Huxley goes on to tell about how colors were brighter, shapes were more vivid, things were more meaningful, he could see himself in more people. Once his normal means of seeing the world began to slip and began to become looser, he became a different person. And what the real discovery behind this was that we are a product of what we observe. We are a product of what we see. And when we can see things from a different light, then we can see things in a different manner, where the world becomes different. Everything appears differently. And there's truly a profound statement at this. This is really what most self-help books, self-improvement books are trying to tell you. It's that when you see the world differently, it appears differently. When you look for different things in this world, you will see different things. But it goes to a religious element. Huxley makes a very bold claim that the reason why there was so much religious fanaticism back in the day is because before refrigerators, before preservatives, before people could have food all year long, people would basically be fasting year round. They'd be eating rotten food, and this food would have these psychoactive chemicals, and it would make them hallucinate things. And this is why people had so many vivid visions of the Virgin Mother or Jesus or whatever culture that you're from. And it's a very interesting book. It's a very fun book to read, and it's something that I think you can gain a lot of insights from. I don't think you necessarily even have to agree with the premise of the book, but I just think it's a cool book because it's one of the most celebrated authors of all time experiencing something that you see in movies. And it really just is a cool book from that premise alone. And I think it really influenced a lot of Huxley's later works. Like, if you've ever read, what's the book called? Island by Huxley. That is the response to Brave New World after Huxley had this experience with mescaline. So with that said, I think it's an interesting book. Don't be turned off by the premise of the book. The fact that Huxley's experimenting doesn't mean you have to do it too. There's still a lot you can learn from it, and he doesn't advocate for anyone to do it. He just did it out of the want to experiment himself, and I think that tone doesn't push it down your throat. It's not like something that you need to do. So I think that helps in the tone of the book as well. But very interesting book, definitely worth reading if you're interested in anything Huxley did, because it's so weird to read Brave New World and read what this guy's writing now and see the huge change. And it's really cool to see through the years Huxley grow so much as a person and change his beliefs and really change his style of writing. And he's still a great writer throughout all of his life, but the subjects that he covers are much, much more deep and much more important, and they speak much more to the soul rather than an individual prediction. But with that said, great book. We'll get into the next one. The next book is Ulysses. I wasn't going to include this because I feel like I've talked about this, but I don't want to go on too long about this book because I feel like we're already really far, and I've made a lot of videos about Ulysses. But the basic premise of Ulysses is James Joyce sought to create a average day of Dubliners. And what I mean by this is that we often read tales about perfect archetypes and perfect heroes and this and that and this great journey and all these things, but the story of Ulysses is not a pleasant one. It's a story of a man that knows his wife is cheating on him, and he tries to distract himself the entire day. And he goes about his business and he pretends like it doesn't bother him, and he tries to be a father to a man that has a drunk father. And it's really a story about people that have tried and failed. Really a story about everyday individuals and what their experience means and why it's meaningful, why it's hard, why it's beautiful that humans fail, why it's beautiful that life isn't perfect, why we are tested with these challenges. And it does so through a very unique style of basically pure confusion, pure chaos. James Joyce himself said Ulysses is a book that history professors will read for the next 100, not history professors, English professors will read for the next 100 years, and they will debate about what I meant in every single line. And, he succeeded in this. It's been 100 years since Ulysses was originally published. But basically, what he does is he changes the style in every chapter. There are no quotation marks, so you don't know what's real, what's fake. You don't know if the narrator is being truthful or not. They're seeing it through their own lens, so they're very biased. They have internal monologues, and then it switches to another person speaking, and then it switches, and then it switches, and then things are spelled wrong. There's all these references. There's all these intertwining narratives and details and everything going on all at once. And it really, what it really does is it recaptures the human experience. It recaptures human consciousness. It makes you feel like you're a part of this whole story. It makes you feel like you're actually there in the room. It makes you feel like you're in that person's brain experiencing exactly what they experienced. And it's a book like no other. Maybe the only thing that is fairly similar is James Joyce's other writings, and I've yet to read it, but I'm assuming Finnegan's Wake is just as good at this. But again, I haven't read it yet, so I don't want to recommend it without reading it, but it is going to be something that I pick up very soon in the future. I'm just emotionally preparing myself for it because I know it's going to be a very difficult book to read. But now on to the last book. This is going to end up being one of my longer videos. I think I've done like live streams that are longer, but this is, 19 minutes so far, so I'm sorry if I'm boring at this point, but the last book we have is Blood Meridian. This is a book that I'm currently reading right now. I think I have 100 or so pages left, and I really don't know what to think about it yet. I really don't. It's something that right now is unfinished. I have a few guesses where I think it's going to go, but I don't know, because this is a book that is... The premise of the book is a boy goes looking for adventure and kind of finds the wrong kind of adventure. And basically what he gets stuck doing is he gets stuck, being a scalper and basically doing all of these things and trying to win back his freedom and trying to get out of the situation. But what it really talks about is the escalation of violence, the escalation of idealistic wars and idealistic conflicts into pure brutality, and how things aren't really as they appear. And what it really talks about is the American dream, and it kind of talks about the brutality of it. Like we talk about the West, we glorify the West, we glorify Westerns, yet we rarely talk about the reality of things. We rarely talk about the lawlessness or the vicious violence and the vicious acts that happen in order for the West to be established and the West to be won. And it's a brutal book. It really is, but it's compelling at the same time in the sense that like it doesn't pander. It doesn't tell you what to think. It shows you the horror of the circumstances. It shows you how someone can go from a naive boy to someone that's experiencing these things, and how they kind of just have to go along with it because that's just the way things are. And it's very raw. It really is. There's a crooked sheriff, or not a sheriff, a judge. He's more of an archetype, more of the idea of brutal justice, in the sense of like we must do what's right for us and not what's right for the world. Like we must serve our own interests above everything else. And it's really good, man. It really is. That's all I have to say about it so far. I'm hoping it's gonna stick the landing because I'm singing its praises right now, and I'm talking about how good it is. But I don't know where it's gonna go. I'm excited to finish it. I will probably finish it in the next few days, and you'll see a video out on it. But for the time being, those are the most unique books I've read. I'm sure there's a few I missed. I feel like I always miss a few, but please let me know if you've read anything that's extremely unique, is extremely weird, is extremely out there, and I'm open to reading it, so please suggest it to me. I usually like books that kind of don't conform to the popular means, because I think I've read enough books that are like books. I want to read something that's like something else, so if you have anything like this, please suggest it to me. If you want my writings, go ahead, join my school. If you want to support the channel, go ahead, become a channel member. I love you guys so much. Thank you guys so much. Like, I feel like I try to say this in every video, but like, I don't say it enough. And I really need you guys to understand, like, it really means the world to me that anyone is interested in the things I'm interested in, and it's cool to make these videos and to see that people actually listen to it and people actually enjoy me talking about one of my favorite passions. Is just, there's no words, man. There's no words. And yeah, I'm just gonna end it here before I start crying, but